Hi everyone, we are from the second group and today we will presenting our materials that is modes and types of interpreting. But before that, we would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Anak Agung Ira Anjani. You can call me Gung Ira, and my friend's name is Made Cindy Julia Kartika. You can call her Cindy. And the last one is Putu, Witari, Dita, Siwi. You can call her Dita. In this material, there are two topics. The first topic is types of interpreting, and the second one is modes of interpreting. Next, two types of interpreting. First is consecutive and simultaneous. Consecutive. During consecutive interpreting, the speaker stops every once until 5 minutes, and the interpreter then steps in to render what was said into a target language. A key skill involved in consecutive interpreting is note-taking. Consecutive interpreting of whole thoughts allows for the full meanings of the search language message to be understood before the interpreter renders it in the target language. This effort is truer, more accurate, and more accessible interpretation than the simultaneous interpretation. Next is simultaneous. Simultaneous interpreting is the interpreter sits in a booth wearing a pair of headphones and speaking into a microphone. The interpreter cannot start interpreting until she or he understands the general meanings of the sentence. The interpreter in English might not be able to utter single words until she or he hears the variants of the sentence in the source language. A key skill of the simultaneous interpreter is decisiveness. There is simply no time to weigh the merit of variant translations or to recall just the right idiom in the target language. This method is often used in rendering speech, depositions, record statements, court witness testimony, medical, and job interviews, but it is usually best to complete a whole idea before it is interpreted. Move to modes of interpreting. Okay, there are three that I would like to tell you guys. The first is consecutive interpreting, or CI. The speech is divided into segments, and the interpreter sits or stands beside the search language speaker, listening and taking notes as the speakers progress through the message. When the speaker pauses or finishes speaking, the interpreter then renders the entire message in the target language. Second one, simultaneous interpreting, or SI. The SI interpreter speaks into a microphone while seeing and hearing the search language speaker via earphones. The simultaneous interpretation is rendered to the target language listeners via their earphones. The third one is whispered interpreting. The interpreter sits or stands next to the small target language audience, whispering a simultaneous interpretation of the matter to hands. This method requires no equipment. Tutotage is used in circumstances where the majority of a group speaks the search language and a minority, or ideally no more than 3 persons, do not speak it. That's all from me and will be continued by Cindy.
Okay, next mode of interpreting is relay interpreting. Relay interpreting occurs when several languages are the target language. A search language interpreter reads the message to a language common in every interpreter, who then reads the message to his or her specific target language. Okay, for the example, a Japanese search message first is rendered to English, to a group of interpreter. Then it is rendered to Arabic, French, Russian, Korean, or the other target language. We move to the liaison interpreting. Liaison interpreting involves relaying what is spoken to one, between one, or among many people. So this can be done after a short speech or consecutively, sentence by sentence, or as a whispering. So it's aside from notes taken, no equipment is used. Okay, we move to the conference interpreting. In the interpretation of a conference, either is simultaneously or consecutively, although the advent of multilingual meeting has consequently reduced the consecutive interpretation in the last 20 years. So conference interpretation is divided between two markets. It's the institutional and private. So institutional international institution is like a EO. EO is a European Union, and like a UN, it's a United Nations, EPO, and etc. Holding multilingual meeting often favor interpreting several foreign language to the interpreter's mother language. So the local private market tend to the bilingual meeting. So bilingual meeting is the local language plus another. And the interpreters work both into out of their mother tongue. The market are not mutually exclusive. The International Association of Conference Interpreter is or AEEC is the only worldwide association of conference interpreter. Next slide, we move to the legal and court interpreting. Legal, court, and judicial interpreting occurs in court of justice, administrative tribunals, and wherever a legal proceeding is held. So, in addition to practical mastery of the search and the target language, through knowledge of law and legal and court procedure is required of court interpreter. We move to the escort interpreting. So, an interpreter accompanies a person or a delegation on a tour, on a visit, or to a meeting or interview. So, an interpreter the role is called an escort interpreter or an escorting interpreter. So this is seems like a liaison interpreting. We move to the public sector interpreting. So, public sector interpreting is the type of interpreting occurring is field such as legal, health, and a local government, social, housing, environmental health, education, and welfare services. Okay, for the next slide will be continued by my friend Dita.
Okay, next is medical interpreting. Medical interpreting is a subset of public service interpreting consisting of communication between medical personnel and the patient and his or her family facilitated by an interpreter, usually formally certified and qualified to provide such interpretation services. The medical interpreter must have a strong knowledge of medicine, common medical procedures, the patient interviewed, the medical examination processes, and the daily workings of the hospital or clinic where he or she works to effectively serve both the patient and the medical personnel. Next is sign language interpreting. An interpreter may be performed by either simultaneous or consecutive interpreting.
Skilled sign language interpreters will position themselves in a room or space that allows them both to be seen by deaf participants and heard by hearing participants clearly, and to see and hear participants. Next is media interpreting. Media interpreting has to be conducted in a simultaneous mode. It is provided particularly for live television coverage, such as press conferences and live or tape interviews with political figures, musicians, artists, sportsmen, or people from the business circle. In this type of interpreting, the interpreter has to sit in the soundproof booth where ideally he or she can see the speakers on a monitor and the set. All equipment should be checked before recording begins. In particular, satellite connections to be double-checked to ensure that the interpreter's voice is not sent back and the interpreter gets to hear only one channel at a time. Interpreting services can be delivered in multiple modalities. The most common modality through which interpreting services are provided is on-site interpreting. Next is on-site interpreting. In on-site interpreting setting, all the parties who wish to speak to one another are usually located in the same place. This is by far the most common modality used for most public and social service settings. Next is telephone interpreting. Enables the interpreter to deliver interpretation via telephone. Telephone interpreting is more commonly used for situations in which all parties who wish to communicate are already speaking to one another via telephone. For example, application for insurance or credit cards that are taken over the phone, inquiries from customers to businesses that take place via telephone, and etc. Next is video interpreting. So video interpreting requires all parties to have the necessary equipment. Some equipment enables interpreters to control the camera, to zoom in and zoom out, and to move the camera toward the parties that are speaking. Okay, that's all about our presentation for today. Thank you so much for hearing this presentation from the beginning until the end. And see you in the class. Bye-bye.